All right, everybody, welcome back to another great episode, I hope, of All of the Avengers. We've done a little time jump now because we had David Wright and I had already covered from after the Super Adaptoid and Ant Hill Whirlwind issues 45 up through 62. So we're going to pick up with issue number 63. I did make the that one long episode where David and I talked about those issues available otherwise. So you've got one episode that's almost 2 hours long and covers a whole slew of issues. But there was no point in doing them twice. So I just put that in as the next episode. And now we're on to Avengers number 63. April of 1969 is the cover date. And let me introduce the show, by the way. I am Van Allen Plexico. I am your host. And I am currently making my way through and reading every issue of the Avengers. And we have currently read all the way up through 62, as I said in the previous episode. And so we're going to do 63, 64, 65, and 66. Today we're going to cover the Goliath, Hawkeye becomes Goliath trio, and then the first installment of what will be the Ultron in Adamantium story. And I thought that was a nice cliffhanger to leave us off on. So we'll get the whole Hawkeye centric, Clint Barton story first, and then we will look at the beginning of what comes next with Ultron. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. This is the cover for 63. The team is now expanded out to include Black Panther and the Vision, and but no Iron Man and no Captain America, no Thor. I mean, they're on the cover there, but they're not really involved in the story. So this is an interesting lineup. You've got characters that we're going to see, all the way well into the 1980s with the Vision and Yellow Jacket. Now Pym is Yellow Jacket, as we're going to see the Wasp, the Black Panther, some form of Clint Barton, but no Quicksilver, no Scarlet Witch, no Iron Man, no Thor, no Captain America. So let's get going with it. So we start up with the Avengers on a Wakanda vehicle coming back to New York, but it's out of control and people think it's a missile. Something's gone wrong with it and it's going to crash. And what this is doing is setting up an elaborate way for Hawkeye to decide he's no longer effective enough with his power of being a really good shot with a bow and arrow, as we'll see in just a moment. So what they're trying to do is keep the character of Clint Barton around, but give him more power than when he's just an archer. Now, I would disagree with that approach because I think that Hawkeye is very effective and very useful. I think that the classic issue 174, which I guess we'll get to someday, right? That one really demonstrated, that he is very resourceful and able to take down villains far more powerful than he is. But in the meantime, this is what Roy Thomas wanted to do. Now, so mention Roy Thomas, and this has the traditional Roy Thomas way overwritten, tons of dialogue. We'll get through all that, lots of captions. But also, we had Gene Colan and George Klein doing the art on this issue, and I thought that was noteworthy because I really like Gene Colan's work here. I tend to associate Gene Colan with more like Dracula and supernatural characters like that. He's good at shade, at darkness. He uses a lot of blacks. I've never thought he was effective on the Avengers, although he does come back and make an appearance in the Avengers in the early 1980s, late 1970s, early 1980s, which is interesting. But I think his art is really effective in this storyline here. I was very impressed. It may just be the George Klein ink, and we know inkers make a huge difference depending on how they approach their work. But and I know that that Gene Colan did Iron Man and did a nice run there. Again, he does do a kind of a sketchy style usually that is more effective, I think, with supernatural characters. I think he would have done a great Moon Knight, did a great Tomb of Dracula. Not as much usually with technological stuff, but I think maybe the George Klein inks are very underrated here. So let's take a look at it. So the Wakanda ship's coming down. The Panthers trying to stop them, can't figure out what's going wrong. And ultimately, Hawkeye is going to try to save them with this arrow that uses a very strong cable. Now, I can't imagine any kind of cable that's not adamantium, and we'll see that later, that could stop a ship like this. Plus, you'd have to anchor it some way that I just don't. I mean, like if you shot this arrow into the roof of the building, it's either going to rip out of the building or rip the top off the building, right? But physics aside, let's go with it. Hawkeye's bow breaks. Another reason for him to think that maybe he's in the wrong line of superheroing. We'll see another one of his bows later. So the Vision goes outside and tries to attach the cable himself and is just able to, and we can see up here, right at the top, that arrow is bent, but it's holding somehow. And again, I know that the Vision's helping here by grabbing the ship. He must have made himself, diamond density, but I can't believe it. But I don't know. It makes for a dramatic opening to the issue. So the Avengers all come out. They find Hank and Jan, as you saw there, waiting for them in the Avengers mansion. This is after Hank and Jan have gotten married, and Hank has gone to the Yellow Jacket identity. So Hank informs the other Avengers that he has to give up his Goliath or giant man identity for good, because he thinks that changing size so much, going bigger, is what has given him some of his mental problems. Okay. And so he's got this new Yellow Jacket costume that he'll have for a long time to come. And he's made the electro stingers on it more powerful. That's all well and good. And he's gonna be the Yellow Jacket now, teamed up with the Wasp. They make a good pair that way. I always thought that was a good pairing. So Hank puts the serum that makes him grow, along with his Goliath costume, away in this cabinet while they're talking to Nick Fury, except they're not talking to Nick Fury, as you're about to find out. The Avengers decide Nick Fury said the Black Widow has gone off on a mission to another country, but she hasn't come back, so they need to go and look for her somewhere else. Hawkeye is going to stay behind because of his personal connection and so forth. Jarvis is appearing finally. Jarvis comes in and has fueled their craft, and so off they fly. I don't know if that's the Wakanda ship again or something else. I don't think we've seen the Quinjet yet, which is interesting. We haven't seen the Avengers sort of like the aircraft that's most identified with them. But now that Hawkeye has been left alone, he gets a call from Natasha, the Black Widow, and she has no time to say anything. She says, I'm a prisoner somewhere in New York, and that's all she has time to say. Hawkeye recognizes the sounds of Coney Island. So he decides to grab the costume out of the locker and drink the serum and turn into Goliath himself. And meanwhile, we find out who the villains are behind all this, and it is quite the trio of smart, evil jerks. We have Egghead, who we will see again in the Avengers in the 200s when he tries to drive Hank crazy. That would be in the second Jim Shooter run. I was not a big fan of Egghead in those issues. I really don't like the second Jim Shooter run, where it's a lot of it is the trial of Hank Pym and so forth. But he's interesting here as sort of the ringleader of these three evil scientists. You have the Puppet Master, and you have the Mad Thinker. So as they get a lot of mileage in these three issues out of people thinking it's Pym when it's actually Clint. So they see Clint coming in his giant Goliath form, So the Mad Thinker wakes up his android. Instead of a big lumpy guy like he usually has, he has kind of a lizard-looking guy. Okay. And the lizard-looking guy appears on Coney Island with Natasha. And so they're going to fight. But Clint's having to pull his punches because he doesn't want to harm Natasha. So they're fighting and fighting and fighting. Fine. And he finally hits on the brilliant idea of shrinking rather than growing and avoids the android's blow, and he rescues Natasha, who says, first she calls him my love, so clearly the Black Widow and Hawkeye have got stuff going on. And then she says, but your costume, what? Later, lady. Right now, I've got some Avenger assembling to do because D-Day's coming for the whole planet Earth. All right. No really interesting letters this issue, although we do see Hawkeye being cold there from that issue that a couple of issues back. All right. So now let's move on to issue 64. That was a pretty quick read, really, you know. There wasn't a whole lot to go over there other than it's just this is when he changes identities and we got these three villains working against the Avengers. So now let's open up 64. This is a cover I have a kind of a mixed feelings about. This is a pretty classic Avengers cover from 1969. You know, you can see sort of the influence of 2001: A Space Odyssey on that circular space station there, I think, probably. And you got the metaphorical hands. I don't think they fight anybody that big in this issue. It's just sort of a, you know, like when Kang is huge or something, or the floating heads. It's just a symbolic cover, but and the coloring is kind of weird on Yellow Jacket there. I do like Jan's red and gold costume, though. It's funny, I hadn't really thought about it before, but there's a lot of Pulsar. My Sentinel's character Pulsar's look in that, except she has solid gold. There's no red, but that's a pretty neat costume. I like Jan's costume there. That may be my favorite Wasp costume of the hundreds and hundreds that she's had right over the years. So anyway. And again, we continue with Black Panther and the Vision, who are an interesting pair, right? Because we don't have Quicksilver to be around anymore to be, you know, I think Wanda and Pietro were sort of the exotic duo of the Avengers for a very long time. They were the ones that were just a little different, you know, from the others. They came from another country, another continent, that sort of thing. And so now that they're gone, I think that probably the Vision and the Black Panther have taken the place in terms of Black Panther's obviously from another continent, a little more exotic. And the Vision is a synthezoid. They call him an android a lot here, but we know he's really a synthezoid. And so I guess that is a distinction that has a difference. But anyway, and then like a death ray from the sky. I mean, it's 1969. That sounds like something that would be big then. It's an interesting cover. What do you think about the logo now? During the little break there from when I jumped ahead to 63, the logo changed. And this is an Avengers logo. It's funny, isn't it, how Avengers logos from the past tend to come back. You know, they bring them back over and over. They'll bring back the old logos. And the one that I don't think they've ever brought back is this one. This sort of big on the ends and narrow in the middle. I don't know. It's interesting. I think I maybe like it better than the original logo, as classic as it is. But yeah, I'm a fan of the logos that they used for a lot of Marvel comics in the late 70s. That is when I started reading them, right? 76, 77. But I thought the Fantastic Four and Avengers logos from the mid to late 70s were just perfect. And I've never been a fan of the other versions. But this is okay. This is interesting. All right. So we get a very, very unusual, unexpected opening here, doing the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star thing. And then the space station fires. And then look at that. We get a 2-page splash page spread so that we actually get a not a splash page, but a 4-panel page leading up to it. And I like how they make it bigger and bigger and bigger as we get closer and closer. That's a very interesting design. That's a well-designed page, I think. And then you get the big smashing blast like a death ray from the sky. Okay. So we still got Roy Thomas and Gene Colan and George Klein doing this. So now we see that Egghead has been using that space station weapon to blackmail the country. And the Avengers are sitting around. I like that they're sitting around in the Avengers mansion. It looks more like the, and we'll see this again later, it looks more like the way we saw Avengers mansion in the 70s and 80s. And it looks more like we see it in the movie. In the, I will say that there's a couple of things to be said for the second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. One of them is you get a great battle between the Avengers and Ultron at the end. But the other really great thing about that movie is you see the interior of Avengers Mansion. And I guess it's Stark Tower, but it's Avengers Mansion is what it stands for. So, all right. So the Avengers are talking about what are they going to do. And then Clint shows up with Natasha, having rescued her. And there's introductions there. Clint snaps his bow in half. I guess that's one he had as a spare because we saw he broke the other one. So this is, I mean, have there ever been 2 back-to-back issues beside this of Avengers or anything where Hawkeye breaks his bow twice? But there it goes on purpose. And so they talk about it a little bit. And then they're getting a notice that somebody's coming. And so Black Panther says, masks on, those of us that need them. I'm not sure why Black Panther needs a mask, but okay. I always thought it was more for ceremonial reasons than, I mean, doesn't everybody know the Black Panther is T'Challa? I don't know. Anyway, I like that there's a Marvel Superheroes Presents Doctor Doom has his own issue there. That's pretty cool. Oh, is that the... No, that's when Marvel was selling its own merchandise. They had like a room full of toys and stuff that they would sell in the comics. That's crazy. They had like, I guess, pillowcases there. Yeah. Plastic. Oh, inflatable plastic pillows. Those would be handy because they would be super easy to store in the Marvel offices, right? If they're not inflated, they're easy to store. They're just plastic bags. So that's, I can see where they would be selling those. Okay, so Jarvis comes in with a Mr. Barney Barton. And the Avengers react poorly to that because they think of him as some kind of a crime lord of some kind. I'm not exactly sure, but apparently he's some kind of a criminal underworld figure. And he tells them about how he had been invited in by Egghead for his presentation, very much like Goldfinger doing the presentation about how he's going to rob Fort Knox. And then when Barton's leaving with his men, Egghead in a suit of armor comes out and kills Barney's men, and Barney himself barely gets away. So Clint is not happy to see Barney Barton. He even says, your story's as phony as a $3 bill. You just can't take a chance on that death ray blasting your meal ticket off the map. Can you, rat? Brave as ever, ain't you? So meanwhile, the Avengers decide to go attack the space station. So they blast off. And the Vision, goes aboard first. And he is detected. And the battle begins. And Egghead has some radioactive puppets from the Puppet Master that he had procured earlier that he's going to use to control the Avengers by using a paralysis ray on the statues that therefore will affect the actual Avengers. And so as the Avengers are back, and Barney Barton are battling these robots. All of a sudden, they start losing their energy because of what Egghead is doing with those miniatures. But there's no miniature of Barney Barton, see? So he's not affected. He goes charging down. There's an explosion. He's hurt. Egghead tries to get away. And Clint runs up and says, no, Barney, Clint, I don't try to talk, Barn. We'll get you down to earth to a doctor. You're going to be okay. Not likely, kid. And they go through this whole rigmarole where he says, we both made the big time, but you got what I wanted, the fame, the applause, but maybe I made it just a little bit at the end, huh, kid? You know it, Barney. And then Barney dies, apparently, and the Avengers are like trying to figure out what the deal is, and Clint says he was my brother. So he, of course, is Clint Barton, and that was Barney Barton. All right. That gets us out of that one. So now, 2 down, 2 to go. Let's look at, oops. Gotta bring it back up here. There we go. All right, 65. So now the Swordsman gets rolled into this deal, and that's pretty cool. I mean, I think that I like how Roy Thomas put this together. This is very much a Hawkeye, Clint Barton storyline over these 3 issues. And it brings in all the characters that are most associated with him. You have his brother, Barney, even if we didn't know him yet. He's going to be part of 64, obviously. You have Natasha, who's his girlfriend. And now you have the Swordsman, who has a past connection with Clint. And that's a pretty nice cover. I mean, that's got to be a Gene Colan cover. But with the red and the explosion, the energy coming out of the sword, I like that. That's a pretty nice cover, I think. And by the way, we're up to now June of 1969. So obviously these came out probably 3 months ahead of time. This probably came out in March of 69. It was probably written and drawn at the end of 68, early 69. But we're getting close to the moon landing in Woodstock, both about the same time, which is pretty cool. All right. So the Swordsman, Mightier Than the Sword. Roy Thomas, Gene Colan, and Sam Granger inking this one. So let's see how the inking compares to previously. Now, that's an interesting layout that Colan goes for here, where you have 6 panels across a double splash page. It's interesting. What this really reminds me of is Frank Miller in the 80s. That just the panel positioning, the panel layout there. I've never seen anything else like this, especially with the bright red background and behind it. It's just an odd choice. But it just reminds me of something about the line, something about the panel layout. It just reminds me of Frank Miller on Daredevil. I mean, if you look at that, that could be a double splash page of Daredevil instead of the Swordsman. So, all right. So the Swordsman ends up, he's been contacted by somebody. It turns out to be Egghead. They do a little villain back and forth. But finally, Egghead says, let's, flashback, where we find out that Hawkeye and Swordsman were in a carnival together, and they were always sort of feuding over who was the better. And in the middle of all that, Hawkeye comes in and finds out that Swordsman has been stealing money. And Swordsman says, all right, then you got to join me in the crime. Hawkeye says, no way. And so they fight. And you left for dead the youth who became Hawkeye. And so I guess Swordsman thought he killed him, but he didn't. So now Swordsman gives Hawkeye's name. Hawkeye was the boy named Clint Barton, as I always suspected. So Egghead wants to use the fact that Swordsman used to be an Avenger for 5 seconds. He had a cup of coffee from Jarvis as an Avenger, if you will recall our earlier show. He wants to use that to his benefit. So meanwhile, Hawkeye is admitting, Goliath. Clint Barton is admitting that Barney Barton was his brother, which is why he was so secretive about his past. The Avengers are saying, well, he died a hero's death. If not for him, Egghead would have destroyed us and brought the world to its knees. So Clint's kind of conflicted about all this. And he tells the story of, he picks up the flashback where Swordsman left off, where Barney comes and saves him and then becomes a big time hood, and he never saw him again until just the other day. So meanwhile, Swordsman is closing in on Avengers Mansion. He knows how to get inside. He uses secret codes and so forth. And he confronts the Avengers. The Swordsman and you, Giant, are the one that I want. Who are the one I want? You and the coward called Hawkeye. Because he's still, again, Roy's getting a lot of mileage out of the fact that people don't know that Hawkeye has changed identities. And so now the Avengers start bumping into each other, trying to rush to fight the Swordsman. And the Swordsman just thinks it's the funniest thing ever that the Avengers are fighting each other rather than fighting him, which I think is probably funny too and stupid. Finally, the Swordsman starts zapping people with his sword. And yeah, so the Swordsman is taken down. They're fighting. Swordsman using this sword to try to take away his energy, make him weak. And so the Swordsman kidnaps Clint. He leaves Yellow Jacket lying there unconscious. He says, there is only one disquieting note in my victory. I wish to cross weapons with Clint Barton to prove once and for all that it is I who am still the master, not the crude upstart who called himself Hawkeye. So he still doesn't, I think, fully appreciate what's going on here. Egghead, here's a knock. It's them. But you have only one Avenger. I thought you'd capture Hawkeye for yourself. As did I, till I learned he and Goliath are now one and the same. But enough small talk. You bought my sword, hired me to bring Goliath to you. I did, and now I want my reward. And I love this. Interesting here where he says, in due time, my friend, I must know if the man you've brought is indeed Henry Pym, or else the time is out of joint and you're both out of luck, to coin a phrase. So the Swordsman does not take well to this. He punches Egghead. They start to fight. And Egghead has a hidden stun blaster. He's shooting the Swordsman. He's going to kill him and make it look like an accident, he says. Swordsman catches on the window ledge. He's hanging. I love that Clint says, out of my way, Baldy. Swordsy's a rat fink, but I got to help him. That sums up Clint as well as anything, right? This guy's a rat fink, but I got to help him. It's what I got to do. It's what I do. I'm a hero. Mr. I may not be great, shakes on quotes, but something's rotten in Denmark and it's you. So he smacks Egghead really hard. Then now hang on, Swordsy, while he let go. Got to use my belt, the pipe, this wiring before it's too late. So basically, Clint's trying to assemble a sort of a bow and arrow to save Swordsman with, and he does. And he says, big deal. That and a dime will get me a bad cup of coffee. What matters is I've got the guy who caused my brother's death. And maybe wherever Barney is, I've made up for giving up on him, maybe just a little. All right. So that gets us through 65. where Clint now has kind of brought that little storyline to a close, right? He's captured Swordsman, he's captured Egghead, Barney's dead. He's now assumed the identity of Goliath. And I don't know, let's look back on it for just a second here. So I'm curious what you guys thought about this storyline. It is, I mean, the historical thing that comes out of this is, I think there's 2 or 3 things that come out of it. One, this is where we find out for sure Clint's identity, if we hadn't before, that he's Clint Barton. This is where he adopts the identity of Goliath for a while. And he'll be Goliath for a while before he goes back to being Hawkeye. But of course, he will eventually go back to being Hawkeye. And then he captures Egghead, and we find out that Egghead had a beef, as they say, with Henry Pym, which is going to matter when we get into the early 200s, very much so, when Jim Shooter brings Egghead back. Okay, so this kind of wraps up a number of plot lines that have been going on for a while here, but it also brings in the Swordsman again. We haven't seen the Swordsman since the earliest days of the comic, and now Swordsman is back. And of course, Steve Englehart is going to get a hold of him a bit later and make him a very important part of the series. All right, so I don't know. It's a good story in a way. I love the art in it. I think that the Gene Colan art with the different inkers is just beautiful in this trio of issues. Very impressed with it. I don't know. It's the tail end of 1969. About to get into the 70s when things really get intense in the Avengers. You have the decade coming up of Ultron and of Steve Englehart's Kang and all that is coming. So we're in sort of we're heading toward the last issues of Roy Thomas, but not for a little while yet. So, all right. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into issue 65 because we can do one more here before we run out of time for today. And this is going to open up a whole new storyline involving Adamantium and Ultron. Another great cover, right? Another great cover. Can't deny that. Goliath, Clint Barton's Goliath sort of reaching up through from the basement, I guess, of Avengers Mansion. You've got Thor and Iron Man returning alongside the Vision. I mean, this is a classic Avengers lineup right here, because you do still have Black Panther in the head, the floating heads box, but you got Thor, Iron Man, the Vision, Hank and Jan, and Clint. The only thing really missing here would be, as far as I'm concerned, is Captain America and Wanda. I really wish they had Wanda in there. And I'm looking forward to when Wanda comes back, which will be, she's coming. It's been a long time. I hate to say this a blanket statement, but I don't think we're going to see Quicksilver as just a every issue hero Avenger again. I think he's done that time in the Stan Lee issues, the early Roy Thomas. We're definitely going to get Wanda back. The Scarlet Witch will be a major part of the Avengers, really from soon after this all the way up to the foreseeable future. I just, the thing about it is, the Avengers are famous for Thor and Cap and Iron Man. Absolutely. But they're also, because those are the big three and they have their own comics. But the Avengers are also famous for being where these characters go that don't have their own comic, like the Vision and Pym and Jan and Hawkeye. Black Panther had for a while, and then he doesn't. But, the Scarlet Witch, absolutely. I thought, Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, shows up in the Avengers after her own series gets canceled in the late 70s. And I thought they should have kept her around. They did the whole horrible thing where, Avengers Annual number 10. I thought she should have become an issue after issue Avenger, just like Wanda. just like the Vision, she would have made a great permanent member of the cast. I always wanted Marvel to be a permanent member of the cast, but I think that Carol would have been a great Avenger. So anyway, that's the lineup we have now. It's a really cool cover. Got this nice Thor's hammer spinning, Iron Man flying over. It's a really nice layout centered around the Vision there. And we'll see. Because this is Betrayal. And we get, this is worth noting. Holy cow. We get Barry Windsor Smith as the artist here. Now, I don't think that BWS's art on this issue looks the way we think of Barry Windsor Smith art. In fact, I got to put my foot on the brake here and bring everything to a screeching halt to tell you. In fact, let me show you that Barry Windsor Smith's art on the Valiant comics of the 1990s was a huge influence on me. I went back and reread them last year and decided to write a book based on the sort of inspired by the comics of the Valiant comics that Jim Shooter and Bob Layton wrote and Barry Windsor Smith drew. So let me, if I can, just show you. Let me show you that, if you will indulge me for just one moment. I keep hitting the wrong button. I'm so sorry. They've changed the way it looks. All right, here's the book I wrote. Okay, so there it is. This is Chris Kohler doing the art. Just a beautiful cover, totally inspired. We openly, I dedicated this book to Barry Windsor Smith. And we say on the cover and in the title page and in the afterword, all three, this is done as a tribute to Barry Windsor Smith. So please don't say you're ripping off Barry. Yes, we know that we're lovingly ripping off Barry Windsor Smith because it's a connection I want to make very clearly known. Right. So if you like if you like those Valiant comics of the 90s with Exo Man of War, Magnus, and Dr. Solar and the Eternal Warrior, this is the book for you. I think you'll like Union, a novel of invasion and resistance. It's got very similar things going on, but it's my own story kind of based on that. Okay, there you go. It's on Amazon. Please go check it out. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Yeah, you can kind of see up close some of the there. All right, way to go, Chris. Beautiful cover for it. Now, let's get back to, gosh, I have to do this every single time I want to change things. Back to the Avengers comic. This is our last issue for this episode. Betrayal. So Thor is up to something. Oh, all right, okay. So Dr. Myron McLean has invented this this substance. Wonder what it could be. And he's trying to get the Avengers to be able to damage it. Thor couldn't damage it. Iron Man can't damage it. But let's just pause and soak up this Barry Windsor Smith art. And he has Sid Shores doing the inking for him. So yeah, so there's Iron Man, Thor. They're all trying to damage it. Cool shot of the Vision there. Clint as Goliath tries to damage it. He can't. Got some cool stuff going on with the Vision over here. They can't damage that. And all of a sudden the Vision disappears. And we find out they're up on the SHIELD helicarrier, although honestly it looks like the helicarrier is up in space rather than flying over the Earth. I imagine in the script or whatever, Roy Thomas said the SHIELD helicarrier is flying over the Earth, meaning like the landscape, and BWS probably thought he meant like over the Earth, like the planet, right? But here's the big thing. This is where I think we first get Adamantium from this issue. And I mean, I may be forgetting something from that episode where David and I talked about previously. But in any case, this is definitely introducing adamantium. And the Vision is being called to do something. And this is a strange little. What is Iron Man? I've lost this is, I don't. Oh, okay. This is just cutting. We're just a scene transition. So Iron Man is in a simulator. He's fighting. He's able to destroy the weapon. But meanwhile, the Vision comes and flies back down to the helicarrier, confronts a SHIELD agent, and knocks him out. We get this interesting sort of. I guess that's a Barry Windsor Smith pinup of the Vision, but it fits in really well with the story, right? Because you had the Vision attacking the guy. Here's the guy falling down, I guess, and then the guy's falling down. The Vision's still around. So it's like he made a pinup out of a scene from the story. I've never seen anybody do that before. That's pretty interesting. All right. So the Vision is coming to get the adamantium. And he says, no one need know that it was taken by the Vision unless I allow one single gasping human to survive. So he starts turning off the air. Now, down another level. Oh, okay. So we are actually on the helicarrier here, I guess. I'm so confused. I think it's not clear if they're in Avengers Mansion. I guess they are. And he's just Vision is stealing the adamantium off the helicarrier. Anyway, so the Avengers are all sitting around here, which I love this shot. There's sofas and everything. They're all sitting around. They hear some cry for help. It must be Jan. They go up. She's been knocked down. She can't remember what happened other than the Vision appeared out of nowhere and then nothing. The Vision walks in and my suspicions were correct. You took the adamantium and now this, but why? Why? And Iron Man's circuits are damaged. He can't do much. Why don't you become solid, fight like a man? But I'm not a man. I am an android. And by the way, you'll notice that the Vision talks like a normal person here. I guess in italics. Yeah, the Vision still talks. He talks in italics. Later, they're going to change his dialogue to in a yellow box rather than in a normal speech bubble, but slanted. This is an incredible set of artwork from Barry Windsor Smith. I mean, this is almost Neil Adams level as far as I'm concerned with this, especially this panel down here with Clint. And then Thor jumps in and starts fighting the Vision. And I got to admit, I've never seen the Vision and Thor fight each other. I've seen Wonder Man and the Vision fight each other more than once. But I would love to see Thor and the Vision fight. That would be an interesting fight. Because, I mean, all the Vision has to do is be intangible, and Thor can't lay a finger on him. But if Vision decides to go the other way, he can be diamond hard, and it would be hard for Thor to do much to him. So I'm not really sure how that would go. But in any case, the Vision kind of blinds Thor with the solar energy from his jewel, which in the MCU is one of the Infinity Stones, but in the comics it never was. It's simply a solar gem that he uses to repower himself and sometimes uses an offensive weapon like a laser projector. All right, so we get to the end of this issue finally. And everybody's mad at the Vision, but all of a sudden, Vision says it was my mission to stop you from searching the mansion while the Avengers' computers perform the most vital task. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? And then all of a sudden, a rumble beneath our feet. What in Odin's name? Haven't you guessed, Asgardian? That sound signals the birth of one you thought forever gone, of one who now stands composed of indestructible adamantium, of one who is destroyed yet lives again, the deadly deathless dreadnought that is Ultron 6. So Ultron lives again. Now he's got some kind of like a souped up flying motorcycle thing that he's driving, which is weird. And it is that kind of funky looking Ultron that I don't love. I much prefer George Perez's gorgeous gray Ultron from like the 160s and 70s, and then he brings him back in the Kurt Busiek run in the late 1990s. But this will work. So we, for the first time, I think, have an adamantium Ultron, which is a pretty scary situation. And that's a great cliffhanger to leave us on. Next up, the indestructible foe. And of course, fighting an indestructible Ultron is going to become a trope of the Avengers going forward, where he's usually adamantium and very difficult to beat. And the trick becomes, how do you stop a robot that can't be destroyed? And you have to find places to put him, ways to disrupt him, right? And the Scarlet Witch, by the way, is not around here. So obviously that's not going to be an option here. They're going to have to find another way to do it. So, all right, tune in next time when we will start with Avengers 67, a great battle with Ultron. Can't wait. And we'll go on from there. We're coming up, slowly but surely coming up on Avengers 100. And then we're really going to get into those classic issues that I love from my childhood. So, all right, you guys, thanks a bunch. Go to www.avengersassemble.net. That's where we stack these. You can find these obviously on YouTube, is probably where you found them. But either avengersassemble.net, N-E-T, or on YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter at Van Allen Plexico. And go to www.plexico.net. I got a lot of places you can find my stuff. If you like my stuff, you want to go check out that Union novel. It's on Amazon. But also, I have a 9-volume superhero novel series based heavily on the Avengers, the X-Men, the Justice League, called The Sentinels. All you got to do is go to Amazon or go to plexico.net, and you can find all that stuff. So, all right, until next episode, we will see you guys down the road. Avengers Assemble, as always.